I said in an earlier video that I didn't want to keep any scraps, and I've changed my mind. And I want to tell you about that and my new and revised scrap and remnant plan. Hi, I'm Myrna. Thanks for joining me in my studio today. Let me tell you first about a significant project I just finished. I've done two really big projects over my sewing life, and both of them resulted in a new direction and a new area to go deep in. This last one, like literally just ended. I spent 18 months working through absolutely every category in my studio and using it up. And as part of using it up, I was deciding whether I would be restocking that item and continuing with that medium, or whether I was letting it go. Now I'm going to tell you a story, but do not get offended on my behalf because I think it's quite funny. As I was emptying each category, I kept sending photographs of the empty spaces to my daughter. She is the executor of my will, and she thinks that I have a large stash and that I have way too much stuff. And I try to tell her that you should see what some people have. Like, I really don't have a lot. So every time I finished something, I had 140 little containers that beads used to be in, and I piled up all 140 of them and took a picture and sent it to her. As I emptied thread jars, I took a picture and sent it to her, and it was really quite fun. So some of the things I got rid of, I developed an allergy to polyamides, which is in latex paint, it is in polymer clay, it is in epoxy clay. So all of those mixed media type things and the jewelry that I was making out of those, all of that had to leave the studio. In all cases, I found a new home. Sometimes it was in a shelter, sometimes it was with an individual that I knew would use it. The other thing I got rid of was all of my metalsmithing. I realized that as I age and the probable path of my living and my studio size, that I didn't want something that took up that much space and that many tools and required propane. So I moved that along as well. Eventually I whittled it all down and I was left with fabric, which is, I've been doing fabric since I was 12 years old. So I was a little bit, I wouldn't say disappointed, but I had really hoped for something new. And new came after that. I wasn't expecting that new didn't involve fabric. It ended up being the basketry work. Let's just talk about the stash. So as soon as I told you guys that I wasn't going to keep any scraps, I was like, oh, but they have so much potential. And I spent a lot of years moving away from following the pattern exactly as told, to creating my own patterns, to doing my own thing, to studying textile art as well as creative clothing. I trained myself to see the potential in the fabric, and now I wanted myself to just give it away. And I was finding that too difficult. What I decided is that I would only keep remnants that were big enough to make a garment. I would only keep remnants in natural fibers. And I would only keep scraps in neutrals, accents, and both in natural fibers. And then I decided that with those scraps at the end of each sewing project, I would make some pouches. We have large pouch, small pouch, large rectangle, small rectangle. Other than this one, these were made quite a while ago, so they're a little bit different than what I'm going for, but pretty close, these two especially. Then at the end of each project, I will look at what I have for that. As I was prepping for this video, I went through the basket of batting, which had no large pieces. It was all little pieces. I went through each piece to see if it would fit on, if the pattern would fit on that piece. Sometimes I had to piece it together to get enough, but there will be lots and lots of stitching on top of this. And then the backing fabric is a remnant of the current project. You'll see this one probably in the next video, but this is a remnant of that project. So this is the small clam, the small rectangle, the large rectangle. Now with this one, I didn't use batting, I used felt because I have quite a bit of felt and I wanted to see what I thought of that. And frankly, even if it turns out not to be my favorite thing, all I will have identified is that I don't want to buy that again. And then the large clamshell. I didn't have enough pieces this big, so this one ended up having 2 joins. And again, that's still okay because there's going to be stitching all over this in, you can see it clearly here, in a grid format. Things happened here that you'll see later in the video. There are timestamps in the description if you want to jump ahead. When I was doing the editing, I realized there was a better order and I wanted to insert the tour of my fabric cabinets and then come back to the pouches. You get to jump around whatever way you want, but that's the order I'm going to put it in for now. These 3 cabinets are my fabric stash. I tend to buy for my stash when I find fabric that I know I will use on sale, and then I sew from my stash. Over the years, I've noticed that every time I clean it, there's less and less that is wrong. I have a much better idea of what I will actually wear, what I like the feel of. I thought I'd take you through the 3 cabinets. I know you can't see the bottom of this one. I have some pictures to pop in so we can clearly talk about everything. I shifted the sewing machines, but these are my desks. With the original machine I had that I talked about in the last video, I had this cut out with a template and the machine would actually sit right down into the desk and this became all the surface. That was wonderful. When I find a machine that I like that much again, I'll figure that out. There is a shelf under each desk where there are 3 of these baskets. And each basket has a subject. On this side, the far basket is silky linings that are big enough for the inside of a purse. The middle basket is trims. And the basket on this side is organza and lightweight see-through things like that. On that side, it is quilting fabric and bits of batting. In this far right cabinet, the top shelf is interfacing. One of the things I'm trying to do is to minimize the number of supplies that I use. So I have fusing it in white, fusing it in black, that's my favorite interfacing, a lightweight fusible woven, and this is purse foam. And then a little bit of Misty Fuse, which is my favorite fusible web. This far side, I don't know where to stand, this far side is pant fabrics, some lightweight corduroy for coats, and coating fabric on the very bottom. On this side is blouse and light skirt or sundress fabrics, heavier canvas type fabrics, and the very bottom is coating. In this middle cabinet, the top layer is denim. I really love denim. This is printed knits. This is basically solid knits. These 2 shelves are linen. The bottom shelf on the right is sweater fabrics, and the bottom shelf on the left is heavier ponte type knits. I'm finding that this is the area that's changing the most. I am starting to want to use prints versus solids. This is the scrap cabinet. So up here I have some magazines that I will use to make my collage this year. I make one every year. These 2 are about refashioning. This basket contains 3 projects where I have drafted a pattern from a ready-to-wear garment and I am ready to sew it. I just haven't done it yet. This is a skirt and the remnants of fabric that match that skirt that I want to refashion also into a dress instead of the skirt. These are fat quarters that I can use for the backing of different pouches. I had a lot of thread I lost. It rotted, and so when I would pull on it, it would snap. So I kept all the thread in this bag for making thread lace. This is felt, squares of felt, and this is yardage of felt that I also use in pouches. These are the neutral and bright natural fabrics that I'm willing to keep. These are denim scraps, and these are painted bits of fabric. Down at the bottom here, I have a piece of canvas, my embroidery cottons, some of my drawing supplies. I don't draw, doodling I guess would be the better word. Bottom one is empty. And these are denim and linen remnants that I'm not willing to give up yet. I don't like them just sitting on the shelf like that. I need to find a basket that will sit in there. It has to be slightly smaller than the baskets that go under the desks, or it won't fit. It will fit up here, but I don't want it up here. I want it down there. So those are my 3 pattern cabinets. I got them, I believe, on Amazon. The brand name is Solder. And I really like the fact that it had this division in the middle so that each row of fabric would stay contained and not, it shifts enough when I try to pull the one out of the bottom, but wouldn't be constantly shifting each other. As you can see, there are empty spaces. The way I approach my stash is, this is how much space I have allotted for these items, and I'm not allowed any more. Ideally, I'd like it to be at about 80%, so that there's some flow within the stash, which means that things are coming in and out and I'm open to more, as opposed to I'm so full and jammed. When I was checking that video, I realized I left out a few important details. The reason I decided to do pouches is because I am going to be in a sale on the long weekend in August in 2026. My basketry is going to be a component of that sale, but the baskets are very, very slow to make. And I will not have, I'll be lucky if I have between 12 and 18 made by then. So the pouches was something that I could add to my inventory of things for sale. That it would take me time. It won't take as much money because some of the scraps and everything, but I mean, it always takes some money. You have thread, you have zippers, you have batting, whatever. The criteria for me was it had to be 100% done by machine, and that I was going to use raw edge scraps so that I wasn't doing a lot of piecing. These ones that I made that are over here, this is 100% by machine. I did absolutely no hand stitching. Some of the ones I showed you that I had made earlier, they have embroidery details, and I'm not going to be doing that. So that's why I'm making pouches, and that's my criteria for making them. One of the things I realized when I made this one is that I needed to really think about where the fabric would end up. So I have basically 4 pieces of the accent, and 2 on each side. I'd like to maybe have a little bit more. These are left over from the white Wendy dress, and I'll just begin placing them at the edges of where the fabric is. I tried not to make this batting much bigger than it needed to be. Callie, I need you to quit, honey. And I'm not going to overthink this. I'm just going to start placing pieces down. Okay, so this is enough for the large clamshell. I can see that, we might run into some issues. So I might want to stick another piece of something right there and maybe something here. But other than that, it should be good. In terms of which pouches I would prefer to sew, I think the clamshells are cuter. I think that they have more market appeal, but I will make whatever I have enough yardage for out of the scraps. This green fabric is from a pair of pants. This is from a blouse that I'm working on. They actually go really well together, which is quite surprising because they're not common colors for me. These are mostly neutrals. You'll probably see a lot of them until they disappear. This is a linen check that I used in the one bag you already saw. I have already spray basted the backing to the batting. I'll pin this in place. I'll go ahead and do all the stitching, and then I will cut out the shapes and finish the pouches. I will create as many of these as I need. Well, not as I need. I will create as many of these as I have remnants for, and then cut them out and then stitch them together and then move on to the next project. And then I'll have the pouches. Hi, it's the next afternoon. I finished the pouches. Small, I was gonna say rectangle, but it looks more like a square to me. Large rectangle, small clam. How cute is that? Large clam. This is the one I made earlier. At the side of this one, I put a little bit of fabric at the end of the zipper for about 1 inch to keep the pouch from opening right out and falling down. Sometimes you'll find a piece of fabric put on the inside. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do this. So on this one, I tried a bit of stitching with embroidery cotton, and that is more pain than it's worth, so I will go back to this. When I said make as many pouches as I can, I meant, need to say what I mean, right? I meant not more than 4 of each fabric. In this case, it's this print that I'm using up. When I got to the end, I still have one piece to cut out the sleeves for the blouse. I'm not cutting them out till the end when I decide how this is going. But this is the remnants that are left. There's not enough for a garment. There would be enough for pouches and things, but this is now going to the thrift store because I feel I have fulfilled the potential that I needed to. I was asked about this necklace in one of the earlier videos. It is made from leftover bits like this. These are 1-inch squares, so cut from here, and then I put a bit of paint on the edges and then hand stitched around the edges, used an awl to put a hole in the middle, and strung it with beads in between. It is just on beading wire. I noticed that this section condenses, and so it ends up looking like you have too much beading wire at the end. If I were making it again, I would really push this tight together before deciding where the ends of the wire are. I could cut this and take it off and shorten it that little bit, and that would be fine. So they're just made with these little bits, and I'm trying not to have any of these little bits, and I'm not keeping them. I have to give up some potential. I finally cleared the studio out. I don't want to do it again. This is the dog coat, and I was also asked about this. I have fleece on the inside. The outside is made with remnants exactly the same way I demonstrated this, except that I did a little zigzag over the raw edges, and then I went back in with hand stitches. This collar is I just ran denim through the serger and then I cut it off, and it goes curly like this. And it is stitched to a piece of stretch lace. And then this is just bias and Velcro. So that is it for today's video. I will be working on the blouse for the next one. I still haven't figured out the buttonhole thing. I found out that the Bernina buttonhole foot is $185, and that is probably the same amount it would cost me to take my old Bernina 1020 and steal some parts from another Bernina 1020 that I got and see if between the two of them I can compile one machine that works. If that's not the case, it's also about half the price, slightly less than half the price of a Singer heavy-duty metal mechanical machine, which is the next one that I've been considering. And I've noticed in quite a few of the videos I've looked at that it's showing up. So that's interesting. I don't need any bells and whistles. I never use them anyway. Hopefully I will have a solution to making the buttonholes by the time I get to the end of that shirt, and you'll see it in the next video. Thanks for being here. Take care.